Hi, everybody. My name is Omonike Akinyemi. I'd like to start first by telling a little bit about myself and my training and my background. I come from a variety of training that began when I was a child with ballet at the Newbert Ballet Institute, and then transformed dramatically when I joined Ballet Hispanico School of Dance, where I began to learn dances specifically from Latin American cultures, from Cuba, Brazil, Puerto Rico, Spain, all of these different places. So the program there allowed me to perform as a part of the Ballet Hispanico Apprentice Company and also gave me an opportunity to utilize my skills elsewhere because I left when I went to college at Yale. So the first question here is, what are your aesthetic preferences in your practice of choreography? My aesthetic preferences come from my background. I prefer ritual as a way into the story and ritual as a way out. The ritual can involve using the castanets, someone learning castanets. The ritual can also involve a scene set in the forest where there's movements from Yam Valu, Afro-Haitian folklore, and Afro-Haitian Vodun. It can also be the ritual of balletic movement that is performed in a way by the characters I have in one scene from Emancipado by the Banditos. Banditos are a group of gangsters, and they do a series of emboîtés. Emboîtés, as you know from ballet, are very, flirtatious. But when the Banditos do it, it is to really put some wool over your head and get you enthralled by the magic of the ritual, the magic of the dance. So, where does this come from for me? I think it comes from my background, from Africa, where my family is from my neighborhood. I grew up in Spanish Harlem, 106th Street on Amsterdam Avenue in New York City. So just going outside, just walking outside, there was a sense of drama. People would sit on the corner and play cards. There were Spanish grocery stores. There's Africans sometimes selling their goods on the side of the street. There are Columbia students walking around with a sense of wonder. All of these different cultures were constantly colliding in my youth. So ritual for me is also the way into the story, often through an inciting moment, someone learning something, someone practicing a ritual, and it's also for me the way out. Um, in my practice, what is most explicit? What is most explicit is the ritual dance, which I try to keep to form. I try to keep to form to the best of my knowledge. Um, I do a lot of dancing that is fusion, mixing African with flamenco. But there are moments where I feel you need to see these dance forms as separate in order to understand them better, or you need to see it within a different context, like the balletic movement performed by the gangsters, or the Nanyigo, which is a masquerade dance, which is performed by one character when he is in the middle of a town scene and you see him start to sweep the scene using the movements from Nanyigo. And for that, I try to stay as close as possible to the actual ritual that comes from. One reason I do that is because non-yigo is a dance that comes from a secret society in Cuba, a secret society called Abaqua. So it's almost anthropological the way I'm presenting it as a part of a fictional scene, whether it's in a dance piece or in an actual movie. Um, what is the most pronounced thing about my work? I actually set my dances, and I'm trying to set my dances within movies, within full blown narrative pieces where there are other performers that are walking, talking, eating, doing drama, you know. But the dance emerges in the scene as part of the scene. What connections can you make between the aesthetic choices in your practice and other practitioners' ideas? Huh. You know, a strong connection I'm making is in the work of Malcolm Gladwell. Malcolm Gladwell is an author. He is an American author of Jamaican and English heritage who grew up in Canada and moved to the United States. He has several books which I found extraordinary. And in one of his books, he discusses the story of David and Goliath. And his description of the story, for me, is a profound way to get into the nucleus of what is happening in my dance films. He goes straight for the parable that you think David is going to lose. You think he's going to lose. He doesn't have the same amount of skill as Goliath. He's a young kid. Goliath is big, large, but David digs into his strength. He digs into the strength that he has inside him in order to win. Malcolm Gladwell, in his book, shows us that what we thought was a strength or what we thought was a weakness was actually a strength, because he's an expert at the slingshot, and he actually lives in a valley where the rocks are made of barium sulfate. So these rocks are tremendously potent. And one slingshot is the actual strength, has the strength of a small bullet. So going into my stories, I like to start there with a parable that when you're watching my dances, you might begin starting to see something happen that looks to be very ritualistic African movement, but then we're pulled out of it into the greater world, into the greater scene, and we see that the ritual and the power of the ritual and the movement that goes with the ritual actually gives the characters their adrenaline to survive. So Malcolm Gladwell is a tremendous influence. Although he's not a choreographer, I would consider his narrative style much like choreography. Another influence is Bill T. Jones. I think the work he's done in bringing modern dance into musical theater is very interesting. The scene It's a Bitch of Living in Spring Awakening is very exciting, and I like the way movement is happening in a believable way. I believe that these young kids are stomping on the floor. I believe that they are crying out with their hearts. But then there's also a stillness, you know, it's the 19th century, it's Germany, and they are also, you know, a part of their societies that are very structured and again ritualistic. So I like how you don't see the choreography. It's actually so easily woven into the narrative of the musical. Bill T. Jones' work in Fela also interests me. He did a tremendous choreography for that, in which the audience is not just a spectator to the African dances. It's the story of Fela Kuti, a major Nigerian musician who was an avant-garde in a way and brought together influences from Afro-Cuban, Bata drum, Yoruba, um, Orisha drums, all kinds of influences from jazz from the United States. So he brought them together in his world and had dancers always on stage, really going into very primal movements, gyrations of the hips and torso. And these dancers were often also his wives. So Fela as a character was living his truth. And what I like about Bill T. Jones's staging of Fela, the musical, is audience members were asked to enter They didn't necessarily enter the stage, but they were asked to participate and dance and be a part of it. And you see people in the audience moving. And Bill T. Jones describes this as actually being respectful of the culture. The idea that participating is more respectful than being reserved and watching as an observer. So I think that's something that I need to consider, especially when the rituals in my dance pieces are so far from present day norms. Um, One of the ways I'm trying to bring that into my narrative dance drama, Emancipado, is actually having one of the characters involve the audience. Sometimes she'll say, touch this tobacco. Her name is Grandma Esmeralda. She'll go to an audience member and say, touch it, and really get people involved in the touch. So those movements of the character, even with words and gesture, bringing the audience in, are going to be so important in my work. And I think it comes deeply from how I've been affected by these other artists. Um, One of the things I'd like to leave you with is this idea that dance is not just for us as the dancer, choreographer, but it is for the audience to come in and be a part of it as they would be if we were out in the forest and clapping for someone who's dancing. So, how to continually involve the audience in this circularity of performance is definitely what I'm going for. Thank you.